Yo, what's good, y'all? It's Tizzler, and we talking One Piece today. Specifically, I want to talk about some of the powers, devil fruit or otherwise, in the show that really just don't make sense. Now, some of y'all probably saying, it's One Piece, of course it doesn't make sense, or it's a show about pirates and super fruits. But that's not what I mean when I say powers that don't make sense. I'm looking at this kind of like, okay, we already understand the rules of the world, and assuming these powers really did exist, how does it make sense for them to work this way? And to be honest, this isn't really meant to be like a super serious video or anything like that, but I just want to make fun of how weird One Piece is because I've been watching through it and I've really been enjoying it, but it's a weird show. So with all that being said, let's get started. Oh, and I also should say that there may be minor spoilers here if you haven't caught up on One Piece, so there's your warning. Charlotte Katakuri of the Big Mom Pirates ate the Mochi fruit. It's supposed to be a paramecia type devil fruit that allows the user to produce mochi, a Japanese pasty-like sweet, from their body. Now, the show established earlier that Logia type devil fruits allow the user to either completely or partially transform their body into some other element or substance, while paramecia type fruits generally cover like all miscellaneous powers, something like Luffy being made out of rubber. My problem with Katakuri is that his powers are too much like a Logia. When he fights, he can turn his actual body into mochi. From my understanding, he should only be able to produce the mochi from his body. He'd probably be a lot less OP if he couldn't actually just transform his entire body at will and do things like completely absorb bullets and punches from his enemies, but I can kind of give him a pass just because I guess you could say that his body is only able to do that because of the properties of mochi itself, but I still think they should just call him a Logia user instead of calling him a paramecia user. Chopper is part of the Straw Hat crew, and he was a deer that ate the human fruit, which allowed him to gain human characteristics like human intelligence and more human-like appearance. That's all fine and good, but what I didn't get was how the fruit allows him to use all the other forms he's seen using. I get that he's a chemist too and a doctor, and I guess you could say that he modified his own devil fruit ability, kind of like Caesar did to give access to other forms, but most of his abilities are actually superhuman when I thought the fruit was supposed to make him more like a normal human, but instead he gets like the ability to transform into like a giant deer monster at will. But it's One Piece, I mean, makes sense. Can somebody please explain to me why Brook has random ice powers? Like, are they supposed to be part of his devil fruit, or did he just always have them? To me, it seems like Brook just needed to have an extra power so he wasn't just like a skeleton with a sword that sings and dances. From what I thought, his devil fruit power gave him a second chance at life by letting his soul return to his body after his first death. He can also separate his soul from his body at will, which makes sense too because, you know, that deals with souls too, and his main devil fruit power deals with souls, but I really don't understand how Brook's sword attacks can outright freeze people. Seems like an ability that's getting kind of into Kuzan's Ice Logia territory, but I might be wrong. Now, I guess you could say cold and ice is something that relates to death and spirits, but it just seems like a bit of a stretch to me. Sanji, who's one of the monster trio and also part of the Straw Hat Pirates, has a technique called Diable Jambe, where he sets his leg on fire and kicks people with it. No, we're not going to talk about the obvious. How doesn't his leg burn? Because whatever, I wasn't hung up on that. But what I'm stuck on is how Sanji activates this technique after the time skip. Now, it made sense how he activated it before the time skip because he'd spin around really fast and the friction would set his leg on fire. But after the time skip, he's somehow able to like make one or both leg just spontaneously combust. I don't know why, it's just one of the things that I was trying to figure out while I was watching it. Like, is he vibrating his leg really fast, or is it some type of hockey or something? But I guess I just really want an explanation for how Sanji can set his leg on fire without like any type of devil fruit power or anything like that. Zorro, also one of the monster trio and the member of the Straw Hat Pirates, is one of the dopest characters in the show, and that mainly comes from how OP a lot of his abilities are and how much most of them don't make sense. Stuff like cutting through mountains or launching projectile attacks from his swords, but we're going to focus on those because I just think of those things as cool things you could do if you were really nice with a sword, and if you were good enough to fight with a sword in your mouth, like Zorro is. The one ability that never made sense to me is his Asura Technique. When Zorro uses this, he somehow gains 2 extra arms and 2 extra heads, all holding swords which, from what I can see, are fully functional. They never give an explanation of how this works in the show, and it kind of bothers me. Like, I realize he trains a lot and he is trained by the greatest swordsman in the world and all that, but how do you teach yourself, or how do you teach somebody else to just out of nowhere have 6 arms and 3 heads? Are they just illusions or after images, or is he actually growing these limbs? Like, I mean, we'll probably never actually know. Straw Hat Luffy may actually be the most creative devil fruit user in the show. He ate the gum gum fruit, which turned his whole body into rubber. At first you might think of like Mr. Fantastic or the wife from The Incredibles that, I'm sorry I'm forgetting her name, Incredibles fans, or somebody else with stretchy powers, and if you're like me, you're like, why couldn't the main character have a cooler power when you got dudes running around like turning into fire and lightning and all this other stuff? But then as the show goes on, you realize how creative Luffy is with the stuff he can do with his rubber body. And a lot of his powers actually do make sense, but the one that I don't get at all is 4th gear. Don't get me wrong, it's an awesome transformation, and I get dumb hype every time I see it in the show, but I still think it makes no sense. So with 4th gear, Luffy blows lots of air into his muscles to inflate them, which somehow like triples his actual strength. I'm sorry, but that isn't at all how muscles work. How's air making him stronger? 2nd gear makes sense because he uses his rubber blood vessels to pump his blood faster, which, you know, increases oxygen distribution throughout the body, allows him to move faster. That's actually kind of based on a real concept. 3rd gear makes sense because he inflates his bones to a large size and, you know, mass, acceleration, bigger impact, all that physics stuff. What I don't get is how inflating his muscles in 4th gear actually makes him physically stronger. Donkihote Doflamingo is one of the dopest villains in the show, and also one of the dudes you're gonna hate the most. But that doesn't mean his powers aren't questionable. Anytime Dofi uses his power, you gotta pretty much just toss physics out the window. But for some reason, I can't ignore the weird explanation specifically given for his ability to fly. Dofi's seen flying across the ocean and other places in the show, and it's explained that he does this by attaching strings to clouds and propelling himself forward with them. Already there are so many things wrong with that sentence. How do you attach a string to a cloud? How does a cloud then support your weight? Why doesn't he just kick off the air like Sanji and CP9 do to fly? Even that ability makes more sense to me. Furthermore, if you have the power to produce strings, what even gives you the idea in the first place to be like, I'm gonna try swinging from clouds today? This one has to be hands down the most nonsense ability I've seen used in this show. So back in the Alabasta Kingdom arc, Mr. Four had a rocket launcher that ate the mut fruit and became a rocket launcher shaped like a dog that can fire rockets. What, One Piece? Are you telling me that a rocket launcher somehow ate a devil fruit and became a dog? This one I can't let slide at all. Like, how does a rocket launcher eat? The same thing goes for Spondum's sword eating a fruit that lets it turn into an elephant. Do I really need to say anything else for this one? I appreciate y'all for sitting with me through this vid, and like I said, just like the show itself, don't take this vid too serious. I'm just having fun making fun of the super weird characters in One Piece. All awesome characters, by the way, too. Even though these are real questions that I did ask myself when I was watching. It'd be dope if y'all could like and comment. Let me know what y'all think about One Piece, if y'all scared to start watching it, if y'all want to watch it, any of that type of stuff. Let me know that down in the comments. And maybe even sub if you enjoy. But till next time, I'll catch y'all. Peace.